If you're betting on Super Bowl 60 this weekend, you are not alone. Betting analysts projecting more than $75 million in legal wagers on the big game. And that's just in North Carolina. Tonight, WECT investigates the hidden cost of sports betting in North Carolina. WECT's Connor Smith has been looking into the winners and the growing number of people losing more than just their money.
That's right, Fran. Sports betting is now a $12 billion industry in North Carolina. But tonight we're looking at both sides, the money funding local projects and the growing crisis that experts say is not getting enough attention. Sunday marks the biggest day on the sports calendar, and Super Bowl 60 is the biggest day of the year for sports bettors.
They're going to a Super Bowl party with friends and family. It's just the excitement around sports during those moments is really undeniable.
Joe Maloney heads the Sports Betting Alliance, a group of the biggest betting providers. They expect North Carolina wagers on the big game to total $76 million, but they're warning about the dangers that can come with it.
Gambling is certainly an activity that can become problematic. It can become disordered. It can be addictive for some folks, and it's a very, very serious issue.
It's been 2 years since sports betting was legalized in our state. The amount of money wagered since is eye-popping, roughly $12 billion. A chunk of the company's taxes on that money goes to state universities. And to date, UNC Wilmington's athletic department has brought in around $4 million to help with facility upgrades.
It's a wonderful thing for us, obviously, and a very, very important component to what we're trying to do here.
But Kelly Crosby with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services says more betting means more people calling the state's problem gambling hotline. And the average age of people calling is getting younger.
And the escalation of calls has really increased. We've seen over 150% increase in the number of calls in the past 2 years.
So heading into the weekend, Maloney's advice, have fun, but don't go out of bounds.
It's not a wealth creation exercise. It's for fun. And so that's really first and foremost when you go into this activity.
And we do have some links to different resources for people struggling with gambling problems right inside your WECT News app. Connor Smith, WECT News.